Good evening.
Just ends it with the video instantly cuts the videos over. It's like 2 seconds.
Good evening, YouTube. I am CJ, and welcome to the first episode of the Epic Gamercast, Episode 1, Bioshock.
You didn't introduce me, dickhead. My name's Lucky. How's everyone doing?
Yes, this is my friend Lucky, and we just wanted to record a podcast about Bioshock because it'll be fun. Enjoy.
Yep. We're
So,
planning on debating about Bioshock Infinite's story and if it's good or bad.
yeah, and just anything else we think of related to Bioshock that's interesting. So I'm going to start us off by saying that Bioshock Infinite story was not the best, I will admit. I think Bioshock 1 actually had the best story of all the games.
Oh, yeah.
But I would still take Bioshock Infinite's story over Bioshock 2, to be honest.
Okay. Now, when it comes down to Bioshock 2 and Bioshock Infinite, in my eyes, like my opinion, both of them aren't the best. And I'm actually, like, we were talking about this before, but I'm going to change my mind on something.
Yeah.
I honestly did not, I would not take them over each other. I kind of find that they're more of an equal in a way. Because Bioshock 2's plot, it is counterintuitive with Sophia Lamb, like as you said before, again, sorry.
Yeah,
everybody.
We started talking about this before we decided to make it a podcast, and just thought it would be a fun idea if we made it a podcast. So yeah.
My buddy CJ here made the point that Sophia Lamb's whole idea of kill him for the people, kill Delta for the people, even though it's more of her selfishness, it's just it's very like, and added that she's also trying to pump Eleanor with all the fucking atom in the world to make her selfless.
It doesn't make sense. I don't understand what her plan is, was my point.
Yeah. With that, I can actually also agree. It's really kind of, I would have been like, if I really wanted to, I would have given up like the point that she was doing it because to keep Delta away, but even then that doesn't make sense. Because she's literally pretty much forcing her into a glass room.
Yeah, I feel like one thing that's kind of interesting about just all three of the villains is like Andrew Ryan from the first game, who was, I mean, I guess Fontaine was the final boss technically, but Andrew Ryan was sort of the main villain for the majority of the game. And he has this complete opposite idea of how to do everything in comparison to both Lamb and Comstock. He's his whole thing is like all about radical self-interest sort of thing. And how
sorry, go on.
I mean, a lot of people have pointed this out already, but like his name was literally almost an anagram, not quite an anagram, but it was like almost an anagram for Ayn Rand, who like wrote this book on like some philosophy about how everyone should be in everything for themselves. And yeah, basically that's Andrew Ryan's whole thing. And the other two villains are like the opposite, or at least they seem that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also wanted to point out, CJ, it's also related to why Sophia and Comstock are so different compared to Andrew Ryan. You know, Andrew Ryan did make that city just to get away from law, religion, all that stuff, because it was more of the hindrance of society that was keeping, you know,
Yeah, exactly.
innovation and other stuff that honestly shouldn't have been touched, even though he wanted it to. That's actually the whole premise of why he built Rapture too.
Exactly.
And something I do want to say about Sophia Lamb, I know we were going to talk about Bioshock Infinite, but it just kind of, led to Bioshock 2. Every character I've seen in Bioshock has at least have their own motives for doing what they do. Every single character except Sophia Lamb, and maybe
exactly.
and maybe Sinclair.
Yeah.
Because I still have no fucking clue to this day on why he would want to help Delta.
Yeah, I didn't get that. I really thought there was gonna be like some plot twist where he was gonna be a villain. But if I remember correctly, I don't think that ever happens in the game.
No, he gets taken control and forced into I forgot what exactly the project was called, but it was like projects to turn people into big daddies.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember.
So
yeah. Sorry, I forgot a tiny bit of Bioshock 2's plot just for a second there.
Nah, it's all right.
It has been, like, I will note, it has been a little while since I've played through Bioshock 2. But I still remember most of the stuff. But the the thing that's stupid, or the thing, like, I think Bioshock Infinite kind of does, at least with the villain of Comstock, kind of seemed like it was doing a lot of the stuff that um, they were trying to do with Bioshock 2's villain, at least similar stuff, but they did it better. Like,
yeah.
way better. We understood a lot more of the villain's motivations, considering, spoiler alert, you are the villain, sort of, from another universe.
Yeah.
We're making this podcast under the assumption that everyone watching it knows the general story of the Bioshock games.
Yeah. And also, I'm going to probably be talking a bit about the world building plot, like reasons on why Andrew Ryan built Rapture as an example. Now I can't remember if there was a reason or not, but was there actually any full-on reason on why Comstock made the Zeppelin? Columbia specifically, sorry.
Columbia, he made it because he I can't actually hold on. Give me one quick second. I gotta review some things quickly.
Yeah,
There's probably
go ahead.
gonna be a cut in the podcast here.
I guess the only explanation I can honestly pretty much think of is but this is more of just going off of assumptions, is I think the Lutece twins probably did something about it. Because
Well,
the Lutece twins did play a major fucking role within manipulating the strings to make certain things happen.
oh yeah, but they were no. See, I remember this part of the lore. Comstock basically got the Luteces to build the city for him, um, so that he could. You know what? Now that I think about it, maybe the more I think about it, Comstock isn't the greatest villain either. He's because now that I think about it, like I know he becomes very sort of like he becomes very religious after he accepts the baptism. Whereas Booker DeWitt never did that. Um, and just kind of religion sort of seems to be like a big part of the reason for why he's doing what he's doing, which is a little bit vague, admittingly.
Yeah.
But he has more. I still believe he's a better villain than Sophia Lamb because he, for one thing, I just find like the whole like him being Booker from another reality. That was just like a really fantastic sort of twist to the game, I guess, which was really interesting. And was it was also more interesting because we knew his backstory more. We understood. We didn't necessarily understand why he did everything that he did, but we understood sort of more general reasons of like why he was such a different person from Booker despite also technically being the same person. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Something I do kind of want to say about the ending while we talk about it is okay, so I'm gonna be openly to admit this. I saw this one thing from like this from this video why Bioshock Infinite's ending was like didn't really make sense, and I'll send it to you later so you can put it in like the description or something, right?
Yeah, okay.
But I remember seeing that Elizabeth really didn't have to go out on a Booker killing spree. All she really had to do was prevent him from going to the war in the first place. Either that be shooting him in the foot so he can't go to war, or, you know, taking away any motivation on going to war, anything of the sort.
That is a good point.
Because if she did that, then Booker DeWitt wouldn't get wounded from a war, find the Baptist people, and either take it or not. And they also talked about the point on the baptism also doesn't really make sense because, well, getting your head dunked in water doesn't instantly transform you into some religious god.
Well, he believed himself to be some kind of prophet after, which yeah, I'll admit that's a pretty big turn for dunking your head in some water. But I guess
because think about this, like we know exactly how like anyone who's played Bioshock Infinite knows, even if they played it for like a good 5-10 minutes, they know he kind of has that like somewhat like he's not like a detective, but he has like that attitude of a hard-boiled detective in a way. And getting his head dunked in water, which changes him into a religious nut, doesn't exactly flow well.
Your audio is sounding a bit rough there.
Sorry. It like from him being that hard-boiled detective-esque type of personality to a religious nut who's calm and collective about basically everything he does and thinks everything that he does is for, religious purposes it's kind of a big ass stretch.
That's a good point.
Um, and well, while we're on the subject of Bioshock Infinite, here comes some Bioshock Brutal at Sea spoilers.
All right. Burial at Sea was really cool. I just want to say that quickly.
I do want to say that, and honestly, I did like the story. However, there's one thing I just kind of did not like about it.
What's that?
And that was the interactions with Steinman and wait, no, not Steinman. I think the one guy, forgot his name. Crap.
Cohen?
What?
Cohen, the painter, the artist?
No. The person who makes the plasmids from Bioshock 1.
Oh,
the guy who tests them. I forgot his name. Crap.
We are showing true professionalism in our first episode here.
Dr. Sushong.
Yes, that was it. Oh my god.
Yeah. The interactions between him and Fink. I absolutely hated that.
Really?
I absolutely did not like that.
Actually, there's one problem that I have with that as well. Which can I just say mine quickly, and then you can finish off yours?
Sure, and then afterwards I'll also explain why it does not make sense at all. But go ahead.
I will say it seems very strange for Dr. Suchong to be communicating with man, now I forgot the guy. Oh, Fink. Yeah, it seemed very weird for him and Fink to be basically copying their plasmid / vigor ideas off of each other. Because for one thing that you never encounter, not only in Bioshock 1, but in Bioshock 2 as well, is not once do you ever encounter a drinkable plasmid. Ever.
Yeah.
It seems very much like they just don't exist in the first two Bioshock games. Despite the fact that in Bioshock Infinite DLC, it's suggested that drinkable plasmids existed for a while before the
that he went fucking nuts.
Yeah, before Rapture just went into an apocalyptic state.
I am going to say a to be fair thing, but even then it still doesn't make sense. To be fair, it was in the underground part of Rapture, which also did not make sense to me. Because, well, you walk around as Delta outside of Rapture and sure you're in different parts, but there should have been some evidence of it. But when they moved up the platform hidden underground, it they had the drinkable plasmids, but I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. Never mind. Sorry. I had an idea in my head, and then it just kind of trailed on and.
Great.
Okay. So instead, to break this awkwardness, I'm going to talk about why Sushang and things copying their homeworks aren't, it doesn't make sense.
All right.
Or at least it shouldn't make sense. So we can both agree to the power, to gain the powers, you need the atom slugs, right?
Yes.
And Sushang has been pretty much giving that over to Fink, right?
Right.
To make like the vigors. So here's why I'm saying this does not work. All right. Everyone in Bioshock, and Bioshock 2 for that matter, is mutated, deformed, and in Bioshock 2 they're religious, but that's also because, well, they're brainwashed too.
Does
But
Sophia Lamb ever actually brainwash anyone?
oh god, yeah, probably.
Well, okay, actually, that's a stupid statement. I want to walk that back a bit.
She
Um,
she
there's
she
obviously the
rewards.
big daddies and the little sisters, but the splicers, it seems more like she just convinces them that her philosophy is better than Ryan's, and that's sort of why that's why I felt like all the splicers were following her.
Mm-mm. The whole reason on why splicers were following her was more of two reasons. One, if you kill Delta, you get a shit ton of Atom. That's obvious. All right, that's how it was for Bioshock 1. That's why Andrew Ryan did as well.
Yeah.
But the second reason also pertains to the big sisters. The whole reason why Sophia didn't want splicers taking the little sisters was because they're atom generators. And that's why whenever a splicer would step out of line, she would send the big sister after them. And anyone who waited, like a good sport, would get a shit ton of atom, even though, that was never going to fucking happen. They were pretty much lied to, if anything.
Yeah.
And they still believed it because they're too drugged up on atom.
Hold on. Sorry, your audio again is kind of going.
Sorry. Because they're too goddamn drugged up on atom. They're really fucking easy to manipulate there.
Okay. Say that last part again, because I think you were really, really quiet for some reason.
Okay.
Sorry, just the last part.
The whole reason. Okay, the last part. So, because they're so drunked up on atom, makes it easy for them to be manipulated because of that.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think that Sophia though. Like, I don't think it was necessarily brainwashing on Sophia Lamb's part at all.
Oh
Because,
wait, and it also. Oops, sorry. One last thing that pushes my point. Sorry.
yeah, sorry.
Also, Atlas did Fontaine did at one point talk about quote unquote pheromones, which are like spliced up into the air so that splicers listen to Ryan's command.
Yes.
That is lore. That is fact.
I know. That's
right.
Ryan though. I don't think Sophia Lamb uses that because, like, my understanding of Bioshock 2 was that she basically, like, Rapture fell apart and actually, sorry, can you just give me 1 second? I'm gonna make a cut and
Yeah.
okay. Sorry about that. Just needed to take care of something quickly.
Yep.
Crap, what was I gonna say now? Oh yeah, Sophia Lamb. My understanding is that, and this is what makes her a kind of good villain, except that she doesn't follow through with this completely. Is that she's interesting for being the opposite of Andrew Ryan, because Ryan's whole philosophy, if you listen to like all of his recordings and everything, and the fact that he was kind of based on Ayn Rand and all that, his whole philosophy is like business should be unregulated and everyone should act in their own self-interest, and that will ultimately lead to a more advanced society, kind of thing.
Yeah, it was more of like you work for like you get for what you work for.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
deserve on what you strive. And because of that, each individual will be able to strive to greater heights, which will then ultimately become an amazing society. But,
Well,
that
what
didn't work.
and based on what Sophia Lamb was talking about, her idea was almost the opposite. And from what she was saying, her general philosophy was communism. When you really think about it, sort of. Um,
Yeah.
but well, no. What I mean though is like she she's all about like everyone in Rapture is one big family and we all have to help each other with stuff. That's her way of thinking more. It's just again, I still have the problem with the way that they portrayed that in Bioshock 2 is she talked that whole big game, but she didn't really act like it at all. She acted like a tyrant herself, despite speaking out so much against tyrants.
Yeah. Um, Speaking of Andrew Ryan, by the way, I wanted to say something that bugged me a tiny bit about Bioshock 2's audio diaries with Andrew Ryan.
What's that?
Um, and like generally, like I get that he's like the audio diaries in Bioshock 2 with Andrew Ryan are more focused on Sophia Lamb and how much of a problem she's being for him, right?
Yeah.
But the odd problem that I'm finding is that like they were more kind of, from what it seemed like, was more pushing the idea that's what was making him kind of start to panic and freak out, even though that's not true. The whole reason why he panicked and freaked out in Bioshock 1 is because he didn't know who he could trust because things were getting smuggled into his perfect city.
Yeah.
And he started to freak out, and that ended into public hangings. And it just kind of counters that. But something that I do kind of like is like Sophia, she kind of pushes on that a tiny bit. Only a little bit, though. Which it kind of does have its cause and effects because that's what made her the big, like, that's the reasoning on why she became, the leader of Rapture after Andrew Ryan, played some golf. But
Yeah. Well, oh, I didn't even finish. I didn't even totally finish what my point from earlier was.
oh,
The
sorry, go ahead.
the whole point of what I was trying to say earlier, just to finish that thought up. Sorry, this podcast is so unorganized. Um, the thought I was trying to finish up was um, all the splicers, or at least most of them, were presumably people who came to Rapture because they believed in Andrew Ryan's idea of this, self-interest based utopian society underwater. Uh,
Either
and
that
when
or they
that
were just
idea failed them, sorry, just finishing up. When that idea
yeah.
failed them, they looked to Sophia Lamb because her idea was almost the complete opposite, and they were like, maybe we should do that.
Also, sometimes it's also because they're just extremely fucking wealthy.
Yeah, that also.
Like the whole reason Fontaine was able to get into Rapture was because he killed someone named Fontaine, who was a fisherman. And Fontaine then disguised himself as Fontaine in a funny twist.
Yeah.
I still find that really funny. I know it kind of makes sense altogether with the context of it, but Fontaine disguised himself as Fontaine. Just saying that just sounds odd.
Yeah, it's really it gets really meta when he later also disguises himself as Atlas.
Yeah, so it's Fontaine. Fontaine disguised himself as Fontaine, who disguised himself as Atlas.
Yeah, just multiple character layers here. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, he was an interesting character there. But
I, I will say something that I will give Bioshock 2 credit for, which honestly, this comes from one of my favorite parts in Bioshock, was the not the second part, but like the first part of the Gil Alexander stuff. They actually did have some Fontaine audio diaries, and some of them were actually pretty interesting, like how Fontaine was able to fake his death. And I know it's something as simple as that, but it's still kind of cool in him, you know, just kind of, just kind of doing that. But then it got me thinking, why the hell would Fontaine decide to leave an audio diary explaining that he's going to act as Atlas and dodge a bullet? Like, what's the point in that? I know it was in his safe, but
yeah,
no.
well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, the audio diaries are just kind of a fun way to listen to lore, and some of them do have a purpose, like the ones that you learn codes from and all that. But I mean, really, when you listen to a lot of the audio diaries, you're kind of like, why did anyone record this? Like, why did they feel the need to record this?
With Bioshock One, the audio diaries did make sense because it's genuinely like pretty much the only way other than Atlas to explain what happened to the city, right?
Yeah.
But I'm also gonna say in Bioshock Two, I'm gonna be clear about this. Almost all of the audio diaries are either based on Sophia or just kind of pointless because we already knew about the city.
Can I? Can, while we're on the topic of audio diaries, and specifically the ones in Bioshock 2, actually, can I just mention how much I love the side story that you follow of the uh, I I'm sorry, I'm forgetting a lot of names, but the father who's
Yeah. Um.
yeah, who's gone down to look for his child who was taken into Rapture. That was really cool. It didn't necessarily make sense that he was making audio diaries out of it, but it was a cool way to follow his story. And it was a very interesting, even though it was kind of a side story, it was very interesting.
Um. Mind that I also say that back when like before Bioshock 2 came out, they actually had this mini Flash web game that was based like it was generally through his point of view, and people genuinely wanted to see more, and that's also why they gave us more of him.
Oh
um
yeah, I
and
few people know about that game. Even I didn't know about it actually until you showed it to me later.
yeah, and the only reason I found out about it was because of a YouTube video talking about it, and I was like, whoa. This looks cool.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic. Is there still a website up where you can actually play that? I might link that just for the fun of it.
Yeah, let me get the Bioshock Infinite ending explanation thingy first, and I'll send that to you, and then I'll also send the Rapture Archives because there's a website that's called Rapture Archives, which are generally like just they find things that are within Bioshock or things that have changed within Bioshocks, and they just kind of keep adding it there. So like they have OSTs, they went deep. Um,
Yeah,
Uh,
I also have one final topic that well, maybe not final topic. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what else we think of doing for the rest of this podcast. I don't know how long this is going to be. Um, it'll be that long. You know, the text that's on screen now that I'll put in later. That's how long it is.
yeah, that's how that the text right now is how long it's gonna be till here until the end. So yeah, good luck.
You keep getting very quiet and then very loud.
I don't know why.
It's weird. That's okay though. I'll try and edit the audio the best that I can later. Uh, sorry if my editing is not the greatest, but I'll do my best with that. Oh yeah, and the subject I was gonna say is which Bioshock had like the best gameplay? Like which game is just the funnest to play? I don't know if that's a word, but shut up. Which game is the most fun to play?
Huh. I think I think the one I found like that was like the most like the you know the game that just felt the most fun out of all was Bioshock One. It it really like it's hard to explain because it's more of sometimes you do have to put in some thought and some strategy into it. Like first time fighting the Big Daddy, there's like strategies like keeping the turret in the middle of the medical pavilion hacked and the one on the side and using telekinesis to throw barrels
Oh
at the Big
yeah.
Daddy. And like that stuff is really cool. And sure there is a point in the game where you literally do not have to really think about stuff like that. But in Bioshock 2, it was more of swing, 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 dead. And same with Bioshock Infinite. Like they had variety in it, but I felt like they didn't have as much variety as Bioshock 1. But yet again, this is from personal experience because you could play Bioshock 2, for example, and then find less variety in Bioshock 1 from that, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to say because it's just whenever you ask what's the most fun game or thing, it's going to 100% be it's 100% going to be based on opinions.
Well, yeah, obviously. But I just thought it would be interesting to talk about. Like for me, I'm definitely in the least like I am definitely not in the I guess consensus on this one probably. But I actually really enjoyed Bioshock Infinite in terms of gameplay, like specifically fighting mechanics. I will say though, like the one major criticism that a lot of people have, I do still share, which is the lack of a weapon wheel.
Yeah.
That that did that did suck. Like I'm not gonna say that didn't suck because it did. Um, and I really wish heck I wish even when the remastered came out I was wishing that they would have changed that, but nope. Um, but I will say it had I just found the plasmids like for me I just enjoyed a lot of the plasmids that were in Bioshock Infinite a lot more than or not the plasmids, sorry, the vigors in Bioshock Infinite a lot more than some of the plasmids in the last two Bioshock games. Like I'm trying to think of a good example. Oh, um, Undertow is a good example. That also goes with probably my other argument for why I really enjoy Infinite's gameplay. Um, the environments are like really unique for fighting. I really enjoyed sort of um, the mechanic of like the skylines. I thought,
Yeah.
yeah, those were really fun, and sort of figuring out how to use the plasmids sort of with the environment was kind of interesting. Like, I like how you can make pretty much any. I mean, I guess you can if you upgrade them enough. You can also do this in the other Bioshock games, making any plasmid into a trap.
Yeah.
Um, but you have to kind of combine multiple plasmids to do that. Um, and then there's also uh, the to go back to Undertow, for example. When you're, I really like sort of being able to, you can pick enemies off one by one in certain areas by just kind of grabbing them with Undertow and just fighting them that way. You can also just go in um, with. I feel like I'm.
No, no,
I
no.
need
Don't
I
worry.
need a minute to think here. It's kind of
Um,
hard to explain why I enjoy it, but
think about it real quick while I also like give an opinion on something that I did like from Bioshock Infinite,
yeah, sure.
gameplay wise. Is I liked that they at least put a bit more thought within Vigors compared to Bioshock 2's thought process with plasmids. Now, don't get me wrong, they did have a couple of new plasmids, but they weren't really the most creative, nor were they the most impressive.
I am 100% with you on that. The
The, the
Bioshock 2's plasmids were just kind of redos, at least for the most part, they were redos of Bioshock 1's, and which is fine because they were fun plasmids, but like
yeah,
some more new stuff would have been nice, you know?
like Bioshock 2's Minerva's Den. There was even the completionist, I believe, said this. But there was Gravity Well, and
Yes.
that was an extremely fun plasmid. And pretty sure out of my memory, the completionist was like, "Well, where are all the other plasmids like this?"
Exactly. I wanted more stuff like Gravity Well. Gravity Well was great. Give us more. I also
and
love
I
the.
also have, and I'm also going to say this, which is also kind of a sucky thing to say. But honestly, I found Minerva's Den's story more interesting than Bioshock 2's. I like with Minerva's Den, there's like with Minerva's Den, they keep make you like they keep you thinking on what's going to happen next. Like because like Porter was kind of like the Atlas of Bioshock 1, except he's still good, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's also the mystery on what this new area is. What is this new computer center for? You know, and I know it's like we know about Rapture, but we never really knew what was going on within here. Added that they were making futuristic technology like auto vacuums, which we have today, um, and just generally the thought process behind that is astounding. And I really, really goddamn love the plot twist within Minerva's Den.
Oh, yeah. The ending of Minerva's Den was fantastic. Like, if anyone's played Bioshock 2 and like I don't know, you just played the campaign and you're like, yeah, that was all right, but it wasn't great. I'm not gonna worry about the DLC. Go get the DLC. Do it.
Please, like if you're gonna get any DLC, get Minerva's Den. All right, don't worry about the Protector's trials. Those suck.
Yeah, they straight up, yeah. Like I was actually
They're
really excited to have a survival thing in Bioshock, but it just wasn't that. Like when I actually
it's
played it, I was like, eh.
it's like the museum that they give you in the remastered for Bioshock One, except you actually have to full on work for it, and it more feels like a chore than a game.
Yeah, it can feel more like a chore a lot of the time. Um,
Uh, but really, if you haven't played Minerva's Den, please go play it, and don't listen to us because we're gonna start to talk about the ending of it, and it's really good. Trust me.
oh yeah. Um, God,
All right,
it was so good.
all right. You've been all fair warned, and
Redacted. Yeah,
CJ, sorry,
yeah.
redact that. CJ, you should. I'm gonna give you more work. You should leave a timestamp right here to skip the spoilers of Minerva's Den.
All right. Here is a bunch of emojis.
All right.
Also a
Here's some.
timestamp.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put emojis in there because why not?
Here,
Oh,
have a basketball,
yeah,
a
dude.
scoop of ice cream.
Take this ice cream. Have some like have like three smiley faces with it.
Okay, don't
Thumbs
get
up.
too carried away. Take out those smiley faces. All
Okay,
right.
yeah, all right.
All right.
I'll get rid of these.
Let's stay on topic. All right. We're going to talk about it in 3, 2, 1. Bam. Okay. So, if you're here, you probably either A, know, or B, you don't give a shit. But we're going to pretend you know.
All right, let's go.
Just
Meme review. Not really.
the thing about the story between Porter is I really felt for him. Like, I really felt bad for him. And I felt some of the things that he was doing, sure, morally it was unjustified, but for him, it kind of felt a little like you can accept it in a way
Yeah,
because you really feel bad for him and genuinely you kind of do want, you know, like something like that. And you kind of notice that during the last audio diaries with them, he actually does end up stopping it because he realized on how immoral this is. He's making a computer, you know, literally read the emotions and reactions of his dead wife. And my God, and it's just that fact that's the whole reason it also brings motivation for the villain of Reed Wall to fight Sigma. And you don't really know on why Reed Wall wanted to, stop Sigma until the end of the game where, Sigma is revealed to be Porter.
yeah,
Well,
dude. That
well,
plot,
added that,
that ending
well,
blew me away. It honestly blew me
yeah,
away.
and even then, it's only that you don't know what the motive is at the very beginning, but in the middle, you assume that motive is that Reed Wall wanted to protect the thinker itself from, a mindless Big Daddy. But in reality, he's protecting it from somebody who can, knows the inner mechanisms of it. Someone who can pretty much destroy it.
Yeah,
And having that thought, like that motivation that I like at a lot like that ideals. It makes it a great story. It makes it feel more alive, even though they're crazy. And honestly, I think they more spent time on the Minerva's Den story. Like, it feels like they more thought out Minerva's Den than Bioshock 2, in my opinion.
It
As
does.
kind of harsh as that say, it feels like they've really put their blood and sweat into Minerva's Den compared to Bioshock 2.
Wow, you had a lot to say about that. I don't blame you
Yeah.
though. It is a fantastic DLC, and I will admit, at the very least, plot wise, it does feel like they put a bit more thought into it overall than like. I mean, granted, Bioshock 2's main story, it's a longer story, but it's not as well thought out. It's just not as well thought out. It's
And I'm
fine.
also
I don't hate it.
and also something I do kind of want to say, the story kind of drags out, to be honest.
It does.
It
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 drags out
really
longer than it
drags.
needs to.
Yeah.
The pacing is not the best.
It's because with Bioshock 1, at least the story changes within the game. You have you have certain events that change the characters, even though, I know this was fake, but like Atlas, after, Andrew Ryan blew up the bathysphere that held his supposed family in it. How his motives changed from escape Rapture with his family to kill the shit out of Andrew Ryan. And I know that was set up by Fontaine, but it still moves the story forward.
Yeah,
And
you
even
feel a sense of progression, whereas in Bioshock 2, I mean, you feel a sense of progression gameplay wise, but story wise, it doesn't feel like the story moves with the game as much as it does in Minerva's Den, Bioshock 1, or even Infinite.
because with Bioshock 1, like to finish up my point, is with
Right.
Bioshock 1, it has events that change the story. But in Bioshock 2, it has events to slow it.
Yeah.
Like, for example, when you go onto the train with to also pick up Sinclair, you're stopped by a block of like a humongous block of ice, like the exit's iced over, which just kind of felt needless because once you burn it, well, congratulations, you're on the train again to your next stop. And even things like I forgot his name. It was like the religious guy who was a spider splicer, but how he shot like a torpedo at the ship, and it stopped the ship's progression in general. That really still did not feel like any progression whatsoever, because
Yeah.
because it still went back to stop here and continue. Sinclair losing air, going through Arcadia, Gil Alexander using like a genetic clock. It just kept feel like it. The story still remains as go to Sophia Lamb, kill her, get Eleanor, instead of it changing with the story.
Yeah. I think the biggest difference with Bioshock 1 in comparison to Bioshock 2 is I mean in both of them you have to stop at several different like interesting sort of areas to explore within Rapture. However, in Bioshock 1 it feels like there's a lot more lore and story behind each of the places that you're stopping at, and it feels like there's more reason for you to actually be there. Whereas in Bioshock 2, it kind of just felt like the developers were coming up with an excuse to make this train stop at several different locations before you get to where you want to go. So just like one of the places is frozen over. You know.
Yeah. Something I will say though, which I was a little happy about, a little interested about Bioshock 2, was the specific two new enemies that they had, which were the Brute Splicer and the Big Sister. Now
Yes.
I know this was generalized for specifically like specifically for you being the Big Daddy. And to be fair, the Big Sister story didn't really add up that well. But
In what way? Sorry.
because at the ending of Bioshock 1, because like assuming that actually no, not even assuming. In Bioshock 1, the ending of it, you have the good, the normal, well, and bad in a way, right?
Yeah.
Where either the good ending, Jack takes pretty much all the little sisters up to the surface, right?
Yeah.
The normal and evil ending, Jack harvests them all, gets a shit ton of Adam, sorry, and steals a nuke,
Yeah.
or what I assume be a nuke. So,
Presumably.
and the story behind the Big Sister was the little sisters that stayed behind, which there was none because Jack would have taken care of all of them. Like who grew older became big sisters, which is weird.
Yeah. You know what? Now that you mention it, I actually cannot believe that I didn't think about that earlier.
I'm not sure if they actually did think of like like a
Did
reasoning
they?
behind that. Like they could have put in a reasoning like some of them were still too afraid or too shy, you know.
Did no, that
But
wouldn't. I mean, that wouldn't make sense with a good ending at the very least, because
yeah,
like in the only thing I can think of is that him and Tenenbaum at the time didn't actually find all of the little sisters. That's the
mm,
only thing that makes sense to me.
yeah, it's mm, it's just still one of those things where it's a little
In a
odd to
way,
think about.
yeah. In a way, when you kind of think about it, Bioshock Two sort of sort of kicks Bioshock One's story in the nuts with that one.
Yeah.
um,
Um, something I do also like that I do kind of want to mention as well is the one thing that I did like though, story wise, with the new bad guys, was the brute splicers kind of reasoning on what was going on with it, except one audio diary counteracts it. Now, here's what they could have done, which they decided not to do. What they could have done was decided that Adam can mutate in odd ways,
I don't.
thus creating the brutes, right?
I don't know if everyone, including me, remembers what these audio diaries are exactly.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna explain what the audio diary is.
Okay.
Um, so sorry, just give me a second.
Okay.
Um, but like it would have made sense for them, like the atom within them, to like mutate and turn them into brutes, right? Or
Right.
something similar to that. Except this one audio diary, which you get for killing a brute splicer, that like you can tame it that way, is this guy who decides to mix these two tonics together, or like a couple of tonics together, and then he turns into the Brood after using it. That's generally what the Audio Diary is about.
Right.
But the reason why I dislike that is not because of, not because of how it was played out. It was more of the cause and effect of it. Because if the guy did this, why was there no brutes in Bioshock 1?
Well,
And I know
reasons.
and I know that there are people still trying to survive within Rapture, but it was very, very, very few.
Yeah. I think that's kind of another thing sort of like with the drinkable, it's sort of similar to the drinkable plasmid situation. It was like
Wait, sorry, real quick. I'm just going to quickly explain that. We were talking about this before too. Barrel at sea, it doesn't make sense on why there are like drinkable plasmids in the underground area. Or, well, vigors, I guess.
did we not mention this earlier in the podcast?
I don't think we did.
Oh shit. Oh yeah, we got into a thing before we made this podcast because if I watch this audio, if I listen to this audio back and I find out that I'm backtracking here, I'll just cut this part out. So yeah, that doesn't really make sense, and it's kind of similar to the brute splicers, but yeah, the whole situation of like how the vigors or the drinkable plasmids from the DLC in Bioshock Infinite doesn't really make sense with Bioshock 1. Also kind of applies with the brutes because you see them walking around Rapture in Bioshock 2, but you don't see that in Bioshock 1. But in a way, I feel a bit more willing to accept that because I feel like the brutes add something to the gameplay that's new. So there's more of a reason to add them in. Whereas the drinkable plasmids, I don't know why they had to do that. Other than showing a connection between Suchong and Fink.
Yeah.
They really just didn't have to do that. They just inserted something into the lore that made the previous games make less sense.
Yeah, and also effectively also made Bioshock Infinite make less sense. Because there's no crazy people except unless you count religious people as crazy, which then good for you, pal. Keep it up. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah, welcome. Shit. What was I gonna say?
Welcome to the podcast. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, welcome to the podcast. No.
Actually, how long has this been going?
For about it's a little over an hour. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Okay, I have an idea for one last subject that can be short. All right.
Yeah, sure.
And it's something that I also really want to come back. Bioshock 2's multiplayer.
Oh, yes! I was actually going to mention this earlier and I forgot.
I love their multiplayer.
It was fun.
Yeah. And it was very interesting on how they played certain things out. And like I love I just love the idea, and I love how like it plays out. Now the problem that I used to have with it is balancing. But even then, it's very like the balancing problem is very kind of minor whenever it comes down to the game. You only have like a couple of things that may, or like one or two things that may be way too ridiculous, but even then you can still counter them.
Oh yeah, I
And like specifically it was that the one thing I was talking about, specifically one of them was like, I think it was like it was like whirlwind with like the water, and then it was like you used electro bolt on it or something like that, and it just instantly kills you.
oh
I
yeah,
really I really dislike that, but you could still counter it if you had like something like telekinesis, or you can go around it.
dude. I'm not gonna say that like I'm not gonna say that Bioshock 2 had the greatest multiplayer ever, but man, it was underrated for what it was, in my opinion.
Yes.
It
So,
was like it also made you feel a bit more like something else I want to kind of appreciate too is like just for a second is you know how there's the mechanic where you can find a Big Daddy suit and it's almost like a Juggernaut suit in like a Call of Duty game. It makes you very heavily armored and difficult to kill, right?
yeah.
It also felt like, I mean, in Bioshock 2, the gameplay didn't really, and it's hard to
I,
explain exactly why, but the gameplay didn't necessarily feel that different from Bioshock 1, despite the fact that you're playing as a Big Daddy. But in
essentially,
Bioshock 2, you feel more like a Big Daddy, if that makes sense.
in okay, I can kind of see where you're going. Bioshock 1, when you get the Big Daddy suit, you still feel like Jack, even though you have a bit of a defense boost, right?
Exactly,
And
yeah.
and you make the noises, you slightly hear the footsteps, compared to Bioshock 2, where you're like the tank. But the thing is that even in Bioshock 2, I didn't really quite feel like a Big Daddy. The multiplayer really made me feel like one, though.
That's what I meant.
Because
That's what I meant is the
yeah,
multiplayer
yeah,
specifically.
because
The main story, it did a little bit, but not. I don't know. The multiplayer felt a lot more. What you
for
would expect controlling a Big Daddy to feel like. I guess.
yeah, and like because when you like the multiplayer, you can hear, you can feel the stomps when you're running about, and it's not like really loud, so it's not like annoying. You do a lot of damage. You can leave mines like the Rosie, and like you can toss them. But in Bioshock 2, they made it so you couldn't really hear the footsteps at all, really. And like there was no push to it. Like there's no feeling of power like that you're supposed to get from the Big Daddy than the multiplayer.
Yeah, you feel a lot more like a tank character.
Yeah,
You
um, because the one a problem I had with Bioshock 2, it wasn't really gameplay wise, it was more aesthetics wise. Is I more felt like Jack, except if his wrench can attack like super quickly, repeatedly, and that was about it. Because
yeah.
literally every one of his like weapons were very heavily similar to Jack's weapons.
Yeah, that's another one of my problems with BioShock 2 overall, aside like putting the multiplayer aside, which I thought was a great addition.
Yeah,
But
and then after this point, we'll go back to the multiplayer because you know we don't want
yeah,
to lead out.
yeah. But I just wanted to quickly say,
Um,
the Bioshock 2, and I love all three games. I want to make that clear. I love all three games a whole lot.
Yeah.
But Bioshock 2 is the weakest one because it does the least amount of new things. It comes off as kind of a Bioshock 1, like, granted, a very long and pretty cool DLC, but still like a Bioshock 1 DLC, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a new game. Bioshock Infinite, you kept a lot of the same themes of like vigors being similar to plasmids, and the combat felt similar enough. Like Bioshock Infinite, the combat felt similar enough to the Bioshock franchise, but still different enough to feel, newer.
Yeah. Um. Okay. So anyway, back to the multiplayer. Something that I also kind of wanted to point out that it's kind of it's kind of irrelevant gameplay wise because the multiplayer is genuinely based on the gameplay, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's a little feature I kind of liked was the audio diaries shared between each and every one of the playable splicers. That
Oh,
was a little cool. That was really cool.
like they even put like hints of more into the multiplayer. Like, I also just love that you're like it's just kind of cool that they give you your sort of own, I guess, rapture like apartment as like your sort of
Yeah,
hub area for the multiplayer. It's not really like a big deal or anything, but it's just kind of a fun detail.
yeah, and it's better than just having a menu, right?
Yeah, it's way better than just some menu. It sort of makes you feel, I don't know, I guess.
Immersed.
Yeah, like can kind of you feel like a rapture resident, sort of, in a
Yeah.
way.
I also, sorry, real quick. I also kind of like the little touch of depending on what team you are on depends on who the announcer is. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
So like, if you're on Team Ryan, you'd hear like crush the parasites, we'll save the city together. Wow.
yes,
While on
and
the other team, if you're on Team Atlas, then it's like this guy who's like screaming like he's from a protest, going like "Down with Andrew Ryan, kick
yeah.
their asses,"
Oh
and
God, that was
and I
cool.
and, and I love that little touch, but I just cannot stop thinking about that like the gameplay before. It was somewhat fast, kind of like how like like sometimes the gameplay within Bioshock 1 and even 2 can be really fast, right?
Yeah,
It felt the same for the multiplayer, and it was kind of like it it was like survival of the fittest when it came down to it. It came down to who can place their shots well, and it really added this big competitive oomph to it.
yeah,
And also, Capture the Little Sister was fun as hell. Just saying.
very. That game mode would sound incredibly strange out of context.
So basically, for people who
It's
don't,
basically capture the flag, uh, if we're
not
being honest, but with more
it.
redacted.
I
Yeah.
mean, CJ, God damn it, CJ. Let me just explain it real quick. It'll just make things easier.
Okay. Am I misremembering something, or?
No, you're kind of right, but kind of like you're going to make things sound really confusing if you explain it like that.
Okay.
That's why I'm just stopping you.
I wasn't finished, but yeah. Okay.
Sorry. There's two teams. One's basically kind of like defense and one's offense, right? And there's a little sister. And the offense job is to try and steal them and hold them for as long as they possibly can to get more points. And the defense is supposed to try and stop that. Then it switches sides, and then whoever has the most points overall wins. There you go.
Yeah. You know what? That's a good point. That it actually.
Sorry again.
Yeah, you're right. I was totally my bad. It has been so damn long since I've played the multiplayer, but yeah, you're right. It actually is a lot. Like, it's still kind of similar to capture the flag in the sense that you're sort of trying to take something from the other team, but it's like it's capture the flag with one flag, and also the flag is a little girl, and also
you have to hold them as long as possible with the only weapon being a plasmid if you hold her.
Yeah, to gain points. You're right. That is a much better way of explaining it.
Yeah, and I also like how the defense does get a little bit of a oomph because one person randomly selected to become the Big Daddy, which is really nice.
Yeah. Anyway, is there anything else?
Multiplayer wise, the only thing I can really say is really stuff.
I think I'd like to conclude. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No. I'm agreeing with you. I think we should conclude this.
Yeah. I'd like to just I guess just state my favorite of the three, which is probably still gotta be Bioshock 1, actually.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, Bioshock 1 is definitely the best.
I mean, it's just I mean the other two are also great, but you know, they're also building on the ideas of the first one. So
yeah. And with the first one, it's one of those things where it's just sorry, real quick, like super quick. One of the problems I also had with the audio diaries in Bioshock Infinite is that they didn't exactly world build quite like Bioshock 1 did. And I know I'm comparing it, but the whole reason why I cared about the audio diary in the first place was because they told a story, not only about the people, but the city that's within the people. What's going on? What made it turn into this, right?
yeah.
But in Bioshock Infinite, it's more about Comstock and the people more than anything, which isn't bad. It's just it lost its oomph for me. Anyway, sorry. Let's go back to the conclusion.
Bioshock 1 is the best. All of them are pretty great, despite some of their flaws. Yeah, that's about all I got to say. Join us in the next episode when we probably talk about a game that is maybe one that I've played more recently and have a better memory of, so I can have better talking points.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much to anyone who listened to the first episode here. I really appreciate it. Leave a like if you thought it was all right.
Share the video with your grandma.
Share it with your grandma.
Maybe not your grandma. Maybe your grandpa. I don't know.
I'm 100% guaranteeing you that whoever your grandma is, I don't care who they are definitely a Bioshock fan.
And if you can't send it to your cat. All right.
Yeah.
If you don't have a cat, you now have a cat. All right.
Yeah, just
Congratulations.
like go adopt a cat and share this video with them. Cats love Bioshock. That is just a scientific fact. You know.
And if you hit subscribe, it will add another 2 minutes of me crying in my sleep. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.